As I begin, I want to ask everybody to take a minute and think back to the moment that you fell in love with the sport of auto racing. For some, it's difficult because it may have been several days or several moments strung together. For Wayne, it was real easy. Walked into Seekonk Speedway for the first time with his dad, and there was, on the track, the Woodpecker Special, the black and gold number 20 driven by George Summers. Well, throughout the night he went, found a picture at the photo booth, and had George sign it for him. Photo which he says he still has today somewhere up in his attic. The sounds, the sights, the smells all helped, but it was that Woodpecker Special that got him. Being from Warwick, it wasn't hard for him to get into racing. There was plenty of teams around, and as we are still today, everybody was looking for help. Whether it was the Manfredos, the Marfios, the Rosses, the Tylers, or many more teams, it was easy to find a way. From there, Wayne wanted to drive, and the first time he got behind the wheel, he told me, at a practice lap, he thought he set the world on fire. When he came in, he learned that he had not. But it wasn't long before he started wheeling around in his own ride, racing to the front and winning races. What a year for Wayne to be inducted into the Near Hall of Fame. Racing against Vinnie Anarumo for many years at Seekonk, a couple of championships with Brad LaFontaine, and a bachelor party emceed by Mike Joy. Not bad company to be in around. Over Wayne's career, he picked up 5 championships, 2 at Seekonk, 2 at Thompson, and 1 at Stafford, between several different divisions, the street stocks, the late models, the pro stocks, and the SK modifieds. He had a knack behind the wheel, but he wasn't aggressive. He was a methodical driver. Wait for the time to come and make his move. And sometimes a new pair of sneakers wouldn't hurt. He was a quick learner at the track, quickly becoming one of the top drivers, and fortunate enough to have some of the best car owners around. Ray Manfredo, Manny Dias, Ernie Boucher, Brad LaFontaine were among them, along with Rolly Lindblad, Art Barry, and many more. He picked up a few nicknames over the years too. There was the Super Kid, there was Neon Wayne Dion towards the end of his career, and a trip out to Rockford, Illinois when his identity was stolen, from what I'm told. It was a driver walking around, and every time he asked him who he was, he'd say, "I'm Wayne Dion." So Wayne did just the right thing. He took that other driver's name and went around being known as Dick Trickle. While out in Rockford, he had the unfortunateness of doing something that not many, if not anybody, had done previously. He took a cover that was on the car of Stock Car Racing magazine and rolled it over on the backstretch 2 days later. In the wake of, in the likes of Mark Martin, Dick Trickle, Joe Shear, and a lot of the other Midwest stars, the most popular driver at that time was Wayne Dion. Well, in the November recap, there were pictures of that car in mangled sight after he barrel rolled it. And, well, Wayne started what we now know as the Madden curse. I've heard stories about that trip. I wasn't there, I was too young. But there are about 3 men in this room who lived that trip. And some of the stories that I have heard, we can't repeat. I was 10 when I met Wayne. I was that little kid, short, pain in the neck, car owner's kid. And most of the reason I grew this much was because Wayne stretched my neck and I had to grow into it. A lot of times at the garage or at the track, I'd get in the way and he'd just try to get me out of the way. When Wayne started driving for my father, with him he brought Dan Smith, his best friend and his crew chief. Throughout the years with my father, with Brad, with whomever Wayne went to, Dan was part of that team. But Wayne's team was never Dan. It was Dan and anybody else who came along the way. Because when you got with Wayne, you became a friend for life. The teams that he grew with everybody around him, not just with him. He was a popular driver wherever he competed, whether it was Seekonk, Thompson, Stafford, or even going up to Oxford Plains or Hudson and competing. The fans all knew who he was, and the drivers knew to look out for him as a top competitor. A few years ago, I was fortunate enough to induct Wayne into the Seekonk Speedway Wall of Fame. Before I get to this, Wayne, I do have another honor. the City of Warwick with a proclamation for you today to go along with your induction into the New England Auto Racing Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Wayne Dion.
I wrote a speech this morning at 5 o'clock, and I don't think I'm going to be able to read it because it's a mess. But I'd just like to say that when I started off, like Kevin was saying, my dad took me when I was about 9 years old, and I saw the Georgie Summers. I just fell in love with racing, and I couldn't get enough of it. I started working on race cars when I was 13 years old, and we had some of the greatest drivers around: Bobby Sprague, Freddie Estelle, and the kid from Fitchburg, Mass, Ronnie Bouchard. And after that, I had no intentions whatsoever of wanting to be a driver. I just figured someday I'd keep working on cars and maybe I'd be a car owner. Then the time came, I was 24 years old, and somebody talked me into building a street stock. That was probably the greatest time I ever had. We missed 2 or 3 weeks of building the car. Season had already started, and we ended up winning 5 races and the championship. So that was the start of my career. Then we moved on, moving up the ranks. I went right from street stocks. Georgie Summers convinced Anthony Vendetti to let me run a modified, from street stocks to modifieds. Way too much to accomplish at having a little baby and making $50 a week to spend. So I figured that was it. But as time went on, I got better rides, championships. Ernie Boucher, I just want to thank him for helping us so much. Great cars, great team. We went on to leave Seacon and run a modified at Thompson, Stafford. Won a lot of races, had a lot of fun. Then Brad LaFontaine, excuse me. Then I ended up driving for Brad, again, winning a lot of races. I want to thank Brad. He's the only owner that I've ever driven for that fired me twice. Yep, not once, but twice. And we're still friends. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, all my friends. Very nervous, never nervous when I was driving race cars, but I just had a great time. I ended up starting my own race team in 91, I believe it was, and that was probably the best time I ever had. After Brad and I, we parted, that's when I decided to start my own team, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. A bunch of great guys, bunch of misfits, and we just went on, we worked hard, won, I don't know, we won so many races in 1 year that they started changing rules around just so we couldn't win anymore, but that's neither here nor there. But just, we had a great time, we loved it, and to this day, it's best thing that ever happened to me. One more thing. Anybody that's ever been successful in racing, and you decide to retire, and you want to take up golf, just remember one thing. You'll have good days, you'll have bad days, a lot of them, and then you'll have that one day you'll say to your friend, I would rather hit a wall at 100 miles an hour to play this sucky game.